Well, I think cities have historically been also seen as being culprits. Yeah, they have been seen as villains, as the ones that modify nature, change nature. But also, I think cities are also places of hope. And I'll tell you why, because cities are also very experimental in nature. So, for example, people are talking about urban farming now. There's a lot of interest in growing vegetables in your little backyard, etc. But what cities can learn from countryside perhaps is how to consume less, yeah, and how to move less perhaps. So I always feel that whereas cities are able to have shared resources in terms of infrastructure, but then the consumption pattern of cities is the problem. So I guess if cities were to figure out ways in which you kind of develop a kind of I would almost call it like a socio-cultural movement towards lesser consumption. Cities could be site of that social movement. I almost feel that the climate crisis would need not only technology but also a kind of a social revolution.
Yes.
If at all that were to happen, it will happen in cities. So I'm banking on the artistic, creative and subversive hope that cities have historically offered as ways in which perhaps new ways of living can be evolved. That's what I feel.
Yes, I completely agree. Though in Germany and many European countries, you see this growing tension between the urban and the rural area, the more conservative and in the rural area, and you describe them, liberal, creative elites in the cities. And that leads to tension, sometimes giving rise to very strong right-wing parties. So we do have to moderate this conflict in order to really come to a better future.
But then I think urban design and urban planning can play such an important role. For example, design of houses that use less energy. Presently, there's not much work that's happening in ensuring that houses are more what we call as passively cooled and passively heated rather than actively cooled and actively heated.
Right.
So can I use the conditions to my advantage rather I fight the conditions? Yeah. So I think that could be the biggest contribution cities can make because the amount of buildings they have. And if they were to use less energy every day, I think it would be huge.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree. And I think especially the building issue, of course, is key to the energy consumption. On the other hand, there's another example where I think that cities can really be hotspots of sustainability, and that is for biodiversity. With the depleted agricultural landscapes in the rural areas, today we have the higher biodiversity in cities. And something that is very close to my heart is garden design. If you make wildlife gardens with autochthonous plants, so plants that are from the area, you can really create spaces for biodiversity which have been present in the rural part of the country before, but which aren't there anymore. So animals move to the city. And that's, for me, that's also part of sustainability.
That's a very interesting radical thought. It's almost like we say cities also create second nature.
Yes.
Or new nature. I think this kind of an idea almost goes on that line, that cities are not only simply material and brick and concrete, but can create new kinds of nature.
Yes, and those natural spaces are an area where people can meet, which they can build together, which they can design together.
Yeah.
So those wildlife spaces in city can also have a very important social function.
Yeah, an important public function.
Right.
Yeah. I love the idea of recycling. For example, old newspapers in India, traditionally newspapers were made into these little bags by shopkeepers. Yeah, so and there was a whole cottage industry where these newspapers were bought from us at a cheap rate, made into bags and given to shopkeepers before plastics. So I think recycling could be a great way in which sustainable practices can be incorporated in everyone's life. Why try a second-hand phone? Don't try a first-hand phone.
Yes.
Those things. So.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And another thing that I think we need to change is whenever we think about consuming something, we have to ask ourselves, do we really need it? Yeah. This is true for material things, but also for energy, for example. Do I really need this temperature? Couldn't I do with less in winter? Put on a sweater. And so that is, for me, an important part. Still, just retracting on my own field, I think, is not enough. What I have to do, and what I hope more people would do, is really talk to politicians that they make sustainability the prime criterion for their decisions on policy and on laws. Because nothing is going to change if just a handful of people cuts down on their consumption. We can maybe use 30% less or 40% less, but we need to reduce the output of greenhouse gases by 90%. And that can only be done if the politics and the state really look for regenerative energies, electricity as well as e-fuels or hydrogen for all those purposes. So yes, we do have to do things ourselves, but we also have to put pressure on politicians to make sustainability a priority.
There was this very nice interview I remember of Barack Obama talking about environmental movement in the US, and he says that when at a younger age, the population is more idealistic, and they really believe in it. But as they grow older, their belief in sustainability actually reduces. So that's also something to kind of take care that when we are young, we're more idealistic.
Yes.
But then somehow you begin to lose hope. And I think what we really need to do is keep telling our neighbors, our kids, and about it, and not get disheartened.
Right.
Otherwise,
and tell ourselves that there is hope.
There is hope, and I think, whereas the climate crisis is scary, it does leave you absolutely frightened and scared. But we do need to see some hope and positivity, and we should.
We should.
That's the human spirit, as they say it. Yeah.
Right, and that makes clear that sustainability is not like for distant nature, but sustainability is for ourselves, for our own security and future.
True, true.